This is Politics HQ. A while ago, you just saw a press briefing there by the Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, briefing Nigerians on the measures the government is actually taking to forestall law and order in the state, and also the outcome of today's protest in the state. Now, two things the FCT Minister did say in that particular press briefing was he emphasized on the need for protesters to stick to the court order that confines them to that's the MKO Stadium, the Moshood Abiola Stadium, as against the Eagle Square, where we saw earlier today protesters were marching to protest. The FCT minister insisted that it's a court order and it should be obeyed, to allow for peace and, of course, order in the state. Another thing the minister also said in that press briefing was that based on intelligence, they were able to gather that a particular senator was giving some protesters food. And according to the minister, he tagged it sponsorship. So, he said quite a number of things, but he also appealed to the residents of the FCT to please maintain law and order. It's your rightful constitutional right to protest, but you should do that within the confines of the law. And one of which is sticking to what the court order says, that you must do it at the MKO Stadium, the Moshood Abiola Stadium of the FCT. Well, let's start off what we have today and get into the conversation neck deep. Now, hundreds of protesters across the country actually trooped to the streets over the soaring cost of living and fuel prices. Demonstrators voiced discontent over government reforms, which have triggered high inflation and devalued the currency. Nigerian troops and the police have tightened security in places like Lagos, the capital, Abuja, and many other parts of the country over the rising cost of living kicked off and are expected to continue at least for the next 10 days. Thousands of Nigerians are protesting against the government due to the living wage or living cost and also the fuel price. They are also demanding a reversal to the former pump price of petrol, restoration of affordable electricity tariff, and reduction on import duties, amongst others. Africa's most populous country struggling with soaring inflation and a sharply devalued currency after the new, administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu introduced reforms over a year ago aimed at reviving the economy. Well, joining me in the studio at the moment is Ejike Okpa. He's a global affairs analyst. He joins me live in the studio. I also have Declan Ihekaire. He is actually the National Coordinator Activist for Good Governance. He also joins me live in the studio. Now, joining me virtually, I have Nelson Ekujumi. He's the Executive Director, a Center for Social and Economic Rights. He joins from Lagos. I also have Michael Adaramoye. He's the National Coordinator, Youth Rights Campaign. He joins virtually from Abuja. Gentlemen, it's a bumper-packed house this evening. Thank you for joining in.
Well, thank you for having us.
All right, let's start off with reactions. We all saw that very brief press conference held by the Minister of the FCT, and he said quite a number of things. Number one, he emphasized on the need for protesters to stick to the location as ordered by the court. And he also talked about, a particular senator. But before we even get to that, let's talk about the need to stick to court order as against the right to assembly anywhere in the country. I think I should start off with Declan. Declan, you are on ground. You are at the protest ground today. You did your bit. Before we even get to your experience, what the minister said, the minister of the FCT, your reaction, briefly.
Thank you. I think the minister is far from reality. What do I mean by being far from the reality? I heard him loud and clear. He said that Nigerians should give the government time. But has he forgotten that when he was selling out his party, PDP, he didn't give them time? There are so many things he has said there that are enough to be said that are inciting. And it's quite unfortunate.
He said inciting, like what?
Yeah, very inciting.
Like what?
How could a protest be going on? And a Nigerian who sees Nigerians to be hungry now came to offer them food and you're criticizing such a person, it means Wike wants the protesters to die. And it's quite unfortunate. And the bitter truth is this: he doesn't understand the reality when protest is going on. That senator that did that act should be given a national award. Why? Because when you eat such food, you are definitely going to understand that there's a voice that you must listen to when you're going out of your way.
The minister used the word sponsorship. I mean,
I'm going there. Every protest in this country is being sponsored. It's either self-sponsored or it's being sponsored by people who have the same ideology. 2012 was sponsored by most people in government today. And now they are tagging protests, trying to send messages to them as being sponsored. Let me just give you this. I think the government of the day should appreciate those who are on the streets. They didn't say end the government. They said end bad governance. And Mr. President has told us clearly that there's a lot wrong in the system. And if the Mr. President has admitted that far that things are wrong in the system, then he should see those who are emphasizing that those things that are wrong, the malgovernance in society, should be corrected. He should see them as his best friend and not those clapping for him, not those commending him, even when he has appreciated the fact that Nigerians are hungry and angry. Thank you.
Declan, let me leave you for a moment. Let me move to, of course, Ejike on this one. You had all of what the FCT minister said. Your take?
You know, what is his name? Wike said is just a typical example of how Nigerian leaders communicate or speak to the people. There are three ways you talk to people: talk with, talk at, or talk to. So what Wike has just done, and Mr. President should be ashamed of that minister, is to talk at Nigerians. They have the right to protest, because when you say protest in a specific area, that means sequestration. It's no longer your movement. You know, just like in Washington, D.C., you know, we have the mall. So when Americans want to do it, you go to the mall. And then you now come back and say, oh, there's a court order. Who filed the court order? And then is the court order, can it be appealed? Because, you know, it cannot just be an executive order. So is it the government that went to court and say, hey, do it here? Or who did that? So can that thing be appealed? So that court order does not have a stand until the people that want to protest appeals it. So Wike, again, came on TV, because, again, he can't say anything, you know, contrary to what the president is saying. He's just sort of talking to appease. He's not really appealing to Nigerians. And again, his typical views. When you do that, it becomes sequestration. You sequester people. You should allow them to move freely, or you go in before, because that's going to be a permit. They're supposed to apply for a permit to protest. Then you give them the terms and the conditions of that. But you can't just be doing reactionary. What the Wike has showed is a reaction, because they are not prepared. You know, look, this thing has been going on. They've been talking about doing this protest for the past God knows how long. So again, just like we were talking before the show, Mr. President has to own this. He shouldn't have anybody speaking. He should have, if he were in the United States, in the White House, they were called situation room. He should have a situation room with camera and microphone ready. He should just get over there and talk to the Nigerian people. He hasn't done it. He has failed to claim the responsibility, because he has the traditional rulers to come in to talk, he has everybody coming to talk, but nobody has seen him. And when he does the talking, you could see he's not inspiring, he's not offering any solution. When people say be patient, patience without time leads to starvation. Mr. President, if you need time, if you need he says, I need 1 year, I need this month. And then if you come to the time you have given and it's nothing is happening, say, please give me additional time. But don't tell people be patient. Patient for, I mean, it's like telling me the sun is going to rise from the west when we know it's not going to happen. Speak to Nigerian people. Take your dignity out of this. Take all this. Nigerians are hungry. For the past 1 year, if you objectively look at Tinubu, he has had the worst leadership because the Naira has lost the most value for the first term of a president in office.
We would, of course, get to the aspects of the breakdown of the policies of the new administration and, of course, the ripple effect of which we're experiencing right now. But let me bring Nelson Ekujumi on, who joins in virtually. Nelson Ekujumi is the Executive Director, Center for Social and Economic Rights. He joins us right now. Now, Nelson, you listened to the FCT Minister doing, of course, the very brief press conference there, and he highlighted quite a number of issues. But I would like you to, of course, talk about him reiterating that protesters need to stay within a confined space. He cited some of the disturbances that we saw in certain states like Kano, Kaduna, and sort of to buttress his point. Your take?
Well, thank you very much. I listened to the minister, and I must commend him for reiterating that we run a constitutional democracy that will that when a court gives a judgment, it becomes law. So I don't see how the minister has violated or desecrated his office by appealing to people who want to protest that you should respect the laws of the land. And as we speak at this moment, the existing law has been passed by the judiciary, which has given an order that you have a right to protest, but that protest must be confined within a specific location because of maybe those that went to court and went with reasons that warranted that order. So the minister has not spoken as a minister of the executive. He spoke as somebody who is in tandem with the laws of the land. That look, we don't want what happened in Kano or in Abuja, and even in Kaduna or Yobe, and even in Abuja, we had reports of protesters attacking private vehicles. So the minister is well on course with his appeal. And the minister also went further to appeal to Abuja residents that they can continue to maintain peace. So for me, that is leadership for me. The minister has not in any way told anybody that you cannot protest because the minister recognizes the provisions of the Constitution. And the minister is only appealing to the protesters that they should respect the court judgment. You and I know what happens if we all take the laws into our hand. That will be an invitation to anarchy. So if the courts, which is a separate arm of government from the executive and the legislature, which is set up to interpret the laws, takes it upon itself to give an order, any law-abiding citizen or group of people must be ready to conform with that order until you are able to vacate it. That is how it is done in any civilized society. So saying that because the court has given an order and because you have a right, don't forget that right can be interpreted by the courts. So the courts recognizing the provisions of the Constitution has not in any way infringed on your right. It has not, the court has not said you cannot protest, but the court is saying social reasons were adduced when the plaintiff came to court and an ex parte order has been given. So any law-abiding and responsible citizen or group will abide by that, because if you take the laws into your hand, then it means you are inviting anarchy. Any other person can do that, and we know what will happen. The court is saying stay in a particular location so that you are safe, so that you are safe, so that you can ventilate your grievances as you want, and even that venue is secured.
I mean, Nelson, what do you also make of the minister saying that a particular senator, based on intelligence, was giving out food, to some protesters, and for that reason branded him a sponsor? Is it wrong in any way to help people who are championing a civil cause peacefully?
Well, even if the minister says it's wrong and the security agencies have identified somebody doing that, you and I know that to be able to prosecute him, they have to take him to court. The minister does not have a court within his executive office. So it is for them to be able to substantiate that is a sponsor, maybe getting the food, getting the link. If the sponsor is doing it in clandestinely, then I suspect is a sponsor. So if he's a sponsor, then the laws will take its course if they are able to prove it in court. So the minister has only made the allegation, and we expect that the security agencies will take it up and they will do the needful. And the needful is to charge that senator if there's a substantial evidence, such that the court will look at it, and if the court is convinced beyond reasonable doubt that you have committed a wrong or a violation of the laws of the land, the court will do the needful. So the minister has only spoken as somebody who got information.
All right, so let me leave you for a moment, Nelson. Let's hear from Michael Adaramoye. Michael Adaramoye is National Coordinator, Youth Rights Campaign. And of course, Michael, briefly your take on the minister's speech at the press conference.
Thank you very much. When I heard that the minister was about to have a press conference, I thought, I was curious, and I thought he probably was trying to announce to the resident of Abuja that he's going to resign. Because that is what I expect an honorable politician, to do, considering the level of atrocity that was perpetrated under him today. But since he's not doing, with residents and activists in Abuja, are going to take it upon ourselves to begin to demand for the resignation of Mr. Wike. And I'm making this point clear because all of the points he made does not really reflect the reality of things. And first, for instance, I was at the protest today, and I experienced what really transpired. So that all of what Wike has said is like speaking without communicating anything at all. Because, for instance, he made the point that Nigerians should try and abide by the order of the court of law. If Nigerians today are not abiding by any order, it is because they learned from people like Wike and other Nigerian politicians who have on many occasions rejected many court orders. But the other question is that Wike and Nigerian politicians are making a mockery of our democratic structure. Because the order to restrict protesters means that you are trying to deny them of their freedom to move. It also means that you are trying to set conditions which are not reflected in our constitution and under our law on how people are to protest. So that all of these things are quite strange, but of course they are not really surprising considering the length at which the government has gone to discredit these protests and to ensure that
Michael, let me expand this conversation a bit, right? You are on ground. You are one of those that came out today in Abuja to a protest. And we saw, what happened. At some point, it seemed to turn pretty violent. We saw tear gas canisters, all over the place, and people sort of scampering for safety. There were reports that people at some point were leaving the MKO Stadium, headed, towards the Eagle Squares against the court order. I'd like you to take us through exactly your eyes, what you saw today, what you experienced, vis-a-vis what you heard from the minister this evening.
Well, yeah, thank you very much. To start with, the protest itself, I personally went straight to Eagle Square today to see from my own experience the state of things. And what I saw is a clear attempt by the Nigerian government to try and intimidate protesters from not coming out for this protest. And after then, I joined protesters who had assembled at the National Stadium to try and provide and organize themselves there. Of course, the CP, Commissioner of Police of Abuja, came to the scene and tried to further dictate how people are expected to exercise their rights by telling protesters inside the National Stadium. And we made our point clear. Of course, we are protesters. We are not footballers. We are not athletes who are trying to train for any competition. We are here to express our grievances, and we have conducted ourselves within the provision of the law. In fact, what we did today was under any condition. It was not against the rule of the law. And of course, in fact, many of us should be applauded by ensuring that this democracy that Nigerians fought hard for, that we did not lose this cheaply in the hands of politicians like Wike, Tinubu, and the likes, who are trying and making all efforts to ensure that they abuse and make mockery and even attack our democracy. And what is about today is that protesters themselves decided to make the move to Eagle Square, which was our initial venue. This was the venue we had requested publicly from the minister himself.
All right.
Protesters want to use this public structure. Just as the National Stadium is a public structure, so is also the Eagle Square. But we moved to Eagle Square, and to our surprise, the policemen were there in their numbers and started firing tear gas at innocent protesters. But what we transpired, the violence you saw today, none of this was carried out by protesters. Everything you saw were done by police force, and of course, they were acting under the order of some persons too.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the tear gas canisters that were fired were done not because protesters, according to your eyewitness report, provoked them, but based on orders. But my question to you briefly, and I just want a brief answer. The speech of the minister this evening, to you as a young protester, did it calm your nerves or was it inciting?
Like the other comrade in the studio had mentioned, it is like speaking without really addressing anything at all. Because Wike has not really addressed any of the fundamental issues that are under contention. And there's no young Nigerian who is going to feel like Wike had communicated anything sensitive to them with the speech they've had today. And I don't think any resident of Abuja are going to be convinced that Wike itself is fit enough to administer this territory. All
right. Let me leave you for a moment, Michael. Let me come back to the studio. Let's backtrack. Today is day one. Yes. This protest, according to, of course, what was reported, is meant to last 10 days. The first day, and we've already seen drama across some states. I would like to go to you, Declan. You are on ground in Lagos. You were at Ojota, and from what you saw in terms of coordination by protesters themselves, coordination on the part of security forces, how would you say the protest today panned out?
Yeah, thank you so much. I will speak as one of the authority in respect of this protest. The protest was very organized, very peaceful.
On the part of the protesters and the security agencies?
Well, the security agencies, we wouldn't know their mindset. But you see, when you have a particular mindset and you're being overwhelmed by a superior mindset, you are bound to suffer.
But the interaction with you,
it's possible.
Okay.
They can interact with me, but you wouldn't know their mindset. That's what I'm saying. But you see, the bitter truth is this. It pains people like us when we hear people in government today critiquing protest. It pains us. The coming of the party in power today is as a result of protest. The coming of Mr. President becoming the president of this country today is as a result of protest. Maybe Nigerians don't know. Emiloko is a language of protest.
Can you please explain that?
I'm coming. When you say Emiloko, it means it is my turn. Give it to me. It's a language of protest.
How is it?
Interesting. Probably they were 5 in number trying to get something. And maybe Mr. President is at the bottom out of the 5. And he spoke. He said, Emiloko, it's my turn. He should have waited for those sharing it to share it. For saying it was him is an act of intimidation, it's an act of protest. And so, I knew Mr. President of today when I was very small. I knew I was part of those who joined him when he was welcoming MK Abiola when he was returning from exile. And I knew the role he played. Wike, that is speaking this way, Wike has always been a product of protest. Have we forgotten so soon that he was a stakeholder in PDP? And he protested against his party all through the electoral campaign in 2023. Like the comrade there spoke, Wike is a father, and we are not bastard. He gave birth to us. Mr. President gave birth to us. And we're speaking the language we were born with. We're not against them. We love this government. We love these people today. We love them because we're telling them the truth. I am not one of those armchair activists. I'm not one of those social media activists. I heard Nyesom Ekujumi speaking there. We were in the same camp before. We were barricaded so many years, but posterity will write us right or wrong.
All right. At this point, we need to go on a quick break. When we return, I'm sure Nyesom Ekujumi would like to respond to this. Stay with us. This is still Politics HQ on News Central Television, and of course today we are talking about the hashtag End Bad Governance protest, which has commenced in Nigeria across several states. Well, I still have with me my guest. Before we went on that break, Declan, you actually mentioned Nyesom Ekujumi, who of course coincidentally is with us virtually on the program. Nyesom, I would like you to respond to some of the things Declan said, particularly as regards you, suggesting maybe you are not, this is just a suggestion, maybe you are not a loyal comrade anymore.
You know, we are invited to this program to discuss issues. And like you know, small minds discuss persons, average mind discuss events, while great mind discuss issues. The issue of which we are discussing is about this protest. And like you and I have seen in day one, we have seen destruction, looting of public property in Kano. We have seen the breakdown, the almost breakdown of law and order in Abuja. What we are saying here is a very serious matter. So I won't go into discussing persons. That is for small minds to do. The issue at hand is that even the right to protest under the law is not an absolute right. Don't forget that the role of the government or the police is to maintain law and order. And if the police have information that in the exercise of your right to protest, that you could be harmed, the police has a duty to rescue you. The government has a duty to secure your life. So it's not about me. I won't go that low level to be discussing person. I'm not here to.
Nyesom, let me rephrase. So my question is, let's even look at the objective of the protest. The idea of going on a protest to end bad governance. Is it necessary?
Well, I agree that anywhere in the world we should, agitate against bad governance, but not when people who have political affiliation. Some persons who are like the arrowhead of this campaign were sympathizers, supporters, or members of parties that contested the 2023 elections and their party lost. So how can you be that mischievous? A party that came into power that you have never seen anything good in. So if a political party in opposition decides to protest against a sitting government, there's nothing wrong with that. But they must do it honestly and sincerely to the Nigerian people that, look, our party is against XY policies, not hide under the general term bad governance. Please, can you break down bad governance to me? To a government that has just assumed power in a year of a 4-year tenure. And don't forget, the majority of Nigerians voted in the government. So if some people are dissatisfied, that is within their rights. But majority of us who are not on the same page with them with regards to this course of action, we are saying, and we believe sincerely that the government has put in place several policies and programs to address the issues they have raised. Because the issues they have raised, if it is from their angle, affects every Nigerian. And also, don't forget, we have series of issues. In fact, I'm confused. Some people said, some of their members or another group said the Tinubu administration must go. And for me, that is treason. because the Constitution stipulates how a government can be removed. Some have said the minimum wage should be increased to 250,000 naira. And I ask, what is your local standing in it? Under the law, it is the organized labor, the organized private sector, the federal government, and the state government that can discuss on minimum wage. So where do you have the right to come and tell us outside the parameters as provided for in the Constitution to tell us the route to take? So the protesters have their right, they should continue, but we are appealing to them that they should continue to maintain the peace. And like the Minister of the Federal Capital, Nyesom Wike, rightly said, they should obey the laws of the land. As we speak at this moment, the existing law in Abuja is that protesters must converge at Moshood Abiola Stadium. The court has not said don't protest.
All right.
The government has not
Nelson,
said don't go on protest.
Nelson, let me leave you for a moment. Let me come back to the studio. Let me go to Ejike on this one. I mean, feel free to react if at all you want to react to any of the things that the discussants have said. But one thing that stood out today for many is the unfortunate violent incidents we saw in certain states, and of course the imposition of curfew to sort of curtail the situation so it doesn't snowball to what is beyond what can be managed or handled. Now, states like Kano, Kaduna, Borno, you know, even Abuja at some point, you know, skirmishes there, particularly in Kano and Kaduna. Very unfortunate. For instance, in Kano, the National Communications Commission Industrial Park building was looted. It's not even launched, was looted massively. That's the image you have there on your screen. Some brought out items that you would just wonder. They didn't just loot there, they also looted private businesses too. And that brings to the fore the question as to confining these protesters to a space such that should incidents like this happen, it can be managed. I would like you to react to that.
Look, you know, when it comes to protest, the likelihood of something that nobody anticipated happening, okay? So being confined, my question is this part of an existing law that you have to be confined to a particular place, or is this something that is a reactionary? If Abuja has rules, this is the law, how you protest. So with these people that are organizing the protest, you give them a copy. Here are the rules. This is the streets you have to be on. You can't do this, you can't do that. But it looks like what has happened is a reaction, and they have to go to court. I want to see the FTC, or whatever they call them, FCT, yeah, rules on protest. I want to see it. And then was he voted, or was it something that we can wake up and say, I'm going to do? You know, Nelson talked about going to court. Look, what they call it a due process. The courts cannot issue order until somebody has filed a grievances, okay? Mm-hmm. So that's the job of the courts, to look at the law, and we're going to have to, you know, rule on. So if the executive went to court and said, hey, this is what it is, then they have to give the people the right to appeal it, okay? So it cannot be one-sided. So if the court has done it, the organizers have the right to go and appeal that decision. So the most important thing is that Wike comes to to the media and say, here are the rules on how to protest in Abuja. And our Eagle Square is excluded. You can't do it in Eagle Square. But if it's not done, then he's reacting. And that is not right for the people who have the right to protest. There's going to be issues about, vandalizing and doing stuff. You never know. There could be people that are planted in this group who are going to do this in order to trigger reactions. But
don't you also think a reason why before the protest, the IGP requested some sort of details like contacts and all of that, just getting to know?
Because I'm saying there should be an application.
But, to a very large extent, I mean, we had the PPRO, that's the Force Public Relations,
yes,
officer of Nigerian Police on this show, and he said that largely many of the organizers are faceless, and to forestall this kind of scenarios.
It is a failure of leadership, because in the city that I live in, which is Dallas, Texas, if I'm going to protest, I'm going to have to apply for a permit. okay? And the permit, they asked me what's the nature of the protest, where do I want to be? If I say I want to be the city hall is an equivalent of the Eagle Square. That's where I want to be. They said, okay, how do you get there? I said, all the people are going to come and they're going to park here. But when they park, what streets are they going to walk on to get there? So all of this is part of the application process. So if the people, the IG of police or the public relations police guy is saying never did it, then they could have just said, we're not going to allow this. Okay, somebody that is doing it facelessly, obviously he has an ulterior motive. So you should have requested that, please, we need this information to grant you routes, grant you spaces, or here is the copy of how protest needs to be organized in Abuja in order for you to do this. But what has happened is, you had the president have everybody talking, or the ministers or the appointees. Mr. President should own this responsibility.
All right.
He should be the one, he should be the one talking with Nigerians, not talking at Nigeria. Wike should not even show up on TV because a whole lot of them are messing things up for Mr. President. All Nigerians know is Mr. President is the one who can call his boys and girls to order, and he hasn't done it. He has had everybody speaking on his behalf, and then the things are getting to where they are getting. These things, they have 10 days to go. There's still time for him to get on the Situation Room if he doesn't have one, Mr. President, own one. Get and speak with Nigerians. When you became president, I wrote you a letter, said, travel the country, speak with Nigerians, ask them, what do you want? This is an example of, I inherited something. Even if you adopted the child, it is your baby now. You don't go back to the parents you adopted the child from and blame them for anything. Own this, Mr. President, and show them that this is not about your ego. I think all you're doing is about your ego. This should be about the Nigerians. No, this should be about Nigerians, Mr. President, because at the end of the day, this is all the last political office you're going to have. So leave a legacy of responsibility, and then also stop being insensitive. Stop having everybody speak for what you should be the one owning it. And then, because when all this is done, people will remember the Tinubu administration and not Wike. People are not going to remember any of this other, what I call, little boys trying to make a name for themselves. They will remember Tinubu. So rescue your reputation. 1 year is a short time for you to do what you have done, but also ask for time in order to do what, say, I need 1 year, this is what I'm working on.
Okay, let me leave you for a moment, Ejike. Let me go to Michael on this one. Michael, you, of course, saw videos and, of course, had details of some violence in certain parts of the country. And that brings to the fore the issue of confining protesters to space, and also some information or guidelines that the IGP did give prior to today, one of which was requesting details of protesters, the groups involved, and all of that. And one thing they said is that many of the organizers are faceless. And right now, we are seeing violence in some states. I would like you to speak on this from that perspective, and also the perspective of the role of security operatives in all of this. We also saw show of force, from the security angle too. Bracing up for this day, and this happened. So what is your take?
Of course, the media has been provided with a lot of reports about death of protesters, protesters who were injured, and some persons who are trying to loot this and the likes. And I think I made it clear earlier. If Nigerians are trying to loot today, it is because they learned it from their leaders. They learned it from elements like Wike and the likes, who have looted the country dry. And which is the reason why Nigerians, we are in this level of hardship that we have today. So that sometimes it is not, no matter how you try to say you want to restrict protesters or so. In fact, the part has been made clear today that you cannot restrict the people. You cannot restrict the movement of the people. So that all of the attempts by the government to even ensure that this protest was not hold or is being restricted to a place was clearly defeated everywhere it was attempted. So the government themselves should learn from this. And it is obvious that the government have not even learned from previous protests we've had in this country. So that the question of all this looting ought not to have happened. Because what we've seen in this particular protest for the past 1 week if you try to connect the dots together, you will realize that some of these things are government sponsored and unavoidable. Because when government starts recruiting poor people in rural communities to come and engage in counter protests, people who have not eaten, who are also facing the dire crisis of hunger and hardship in the land, you are bringing them into the city to come and engage in counter protests. Those ones are not going to just live like that. They are not going to just go into the midst of protesters and just fight alone. They also be looking for means to engage in some of these looting activities. So that all of these lootings we see are not unconnected from the approach of the government in trying to discredit and even attack these protests. So that if government has followed the rational path, some of these things would have been avoided.
What would you have suggested as a rational path?
I was at the part. The rational part is that once citizens have grievances, once citizens are trying to tell you that, oh, Mr. President, Mr. Governor, these are the issues we have in the country, and want to embark on a protest because they feel you are not really hearing us, because you feel you are quite disconnected from our day-to-day pains, our day-to-day crisis. Then what the government ought to have done is to even begin to look at those demands and see that, okay, even before the first date of the protest, which of the demands can be met to show that government is serious. But the body language of the government, the Tinubu regime, is that it embarked on sinister approaches to ensure that this protest does not hold. Whereas it ought to have devoted its energy towards meeting all of these demands and even showing the youth, trying to convince them that, oh, this government really cares about them. Oh, this government is truly responsible. It is only by doing that people themselves can see reason to either share these protests or even end it as a whole. When they said, okay, the government is trying to listen to us, but the government never showed any intention of listening to Nigeria. Instead, it's devoted its energy towards holding different emergency meetings. In the last 1 year, Tinubu never had any emergency meeting on how to end hunger, how to end insecurity. But because of protest, you started to engage in all of these activities. Citizens are not going to see that and be convinced that you're a leader that truly understands their pain or is truly interested in ameliorating or improving their condition. Citizens are going to see that and feel that, oh, this government is truly taking us for a ride. And we want, as a matter of fact, all these protests. In fact, probably if the government had even been quiet.
Okay, Michael, because we're pressed for time. Michael, just briefly, Michael.
What is seen today is a product of the
Michael, briefly, I would like you to please just listen to me. Because we're pressed for time, today is just day one. It will definitely continue tomorrow. What do you suggest as a way to ensure that violence doesn't break out tomorrow? Briefly, 30 seconds.
Well, thank you very much. Like I was trying to say, one of the approach the government ought to take is to ensure that all of these dirty gimmicks of trying to sponsor laws to organize counter-protests or so to be neglected. It is a terrible tactic that has never worked and is not going to work, but it's going to lead us into more crisis that we've seen today. And government itself must, however, these youth who are protesting have demands.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael. I'm sorry, I'm afraid. I understand that we need to go on a break. Thank you so much for your time with us on the program. Michael Adaramoye. Once again, thank you. Gentlemen, thank you so much. We will, of course, be going on a quick break. When we return, this conversation will continue as regards the first day of the End Bad Governance protest. Stay with us.